Thank you so much. So I know that there's probably a lot of different questions or things that you all are interested in. So I'm just gonna kind of talk in general terms, and then if there are more specific things, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. And then if I don't read the question, I will still give a verbal answer if I happen to see it. And of course, if Crystal sees it, just let me know if I happen to miss anything. Okay. So yes, so I'm Miranda Dennis. I am a licensed clinical social worker, amongst many other things, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about and I'm able to provide coaching in is neural relationships is an area of specialty with me. So helping people have better relationships, but also ministering to singles and couples, and not just intimate relationships. This is talking about connections and interpersonal relationships with not just a person that you're interested in dating or a person you're married to. So those are some areas of expertise. I'm licensed to practice mental health in the states of New York, Virginia, and Alabama. And I'm also the owner of Oasis Clinical Counseling Services, where we do provide Christian-based counseling. And one of the things that I want to, and it popped into my mind, it wasn't even something that I was thinking that I would share, but for some reason, it popped into my mind, so I'm going to share it. One of the questions I often get is, how do I know if I need a therapist, or should I see a therapist? If you have the question, you should probably find a Christian therapist that you can trust and connect with. There's probably a reason that you are needing to seek additional wise counsel, as the Bible instructs us to do. There is safety in a multitude of counsels. So I think that's important. Often in my experience, singles, but Christians in general, as it relates to should I find a counselor, many people are talked out of it by people they love, by people they respect. And I always question that. So if someone is talking you out of seeking additional wise counsel that you have prayed about with a Christian therapist, why? What is the harm that could come from seeking wise counsel? I've been in therapy before, and there were some that were not a good fit for me. And guess what? I didn't go back to see them. Just like if you went to the grocery store or a doctor's office and it was not a good fit, you don't stay in a place that's harmful for you. The same applies. So if you go and you decide to make a counseling appointment and it's not a good fit, or you get a check in your spirit, then you don't have to continue with that person. But there is a reason that you are seeking additional support outside of talking with your girlfriend or your guy best friend, outside of talking with your mother or your pastor even. Many times you want to be in a non-judgmental, unbiased place that can both agree with you in prayer, but also provide you the clinical tools and skills to help you navigate life. The other thing I want to say is about mental health. So usually people will say, well, I'm not crazy, so I don't need to go see a counselor. First of all, mental health is a spectrum of wellness. It is a spectrum. Everybody has mental health. If you don't have mental health, then you probably are a vegetable and you're not able to have consciousness or reasoning. Everybody has mental health. Some days may not be as good as other days. And so when there's a difference between having mental health and having mental illness. When there is a mental illness, that is where you become debilitated in your abilities to function in your normal capacities at work or school or church or things like that. You guys have heard some of the main mental illnesses, depression or anxiety. You may have heard bipolar or things like that. And some people become overly focused on if I'm feeling sad, then I'm not believing, or I don't have enough faith, or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do as a Christian. Well, there is a difference between a biological, chemical illness, and mental health is exactly that. It is a biological thing. And so it is typically something that you can't control. It's not that you woke up and said, today I'm just going to be anxiety and I'm going to have anxiety forever. It's typically something that literally is a physiological reaction to the environment around you. So I could go on and talk about mental health for quite a bit of time, but I know one of the things that the reason I'm really passionate about talking to Christian singles about mental health is often we have fallen into the trap of believing that if only I were married, then I wouldn't feel sad. I wouldn't have loneliness. I would be walking in my ministry. I could do all the things that God had for me. I could travel. I could buy the house. I would have someone to talk with, which, those are all rational things that we probably have thought at some point. However, you do have to tap into life presently, and you do have to also address your own trauma history. You also have to address other bad relationships that you've been in. You also have to address thinking that's illogical, that continues to keep you in cycles that are unhealthy in the way that you communicate, in the way that you treat yourself, in the way that you treat others in the body. If you find that you're constantly seeking the approval of others, then there's probably something that you want to explore with a counselor. There's probably some myths that you have bought into about yourself, or it could be something different. But what we tend to do is we just want to skip that part, and we just want to get in a relationship and be happy and show the ring on Facebook and hashtag, come up with your little cute wedding hashtag the Joneses or whatever. All that stuff is great, but the preparation to get you to the point to have a healthy marriage, you do that work when you're single. You do that work now. You do what you can now to have a firm foundation. And part of that is sometimes looking in the mirror and saying, I haven't always made the right choice. So yes, I'm going to pray about it. Yes, I'm going to lay it on the altar. Yes, I'm going to fast. And I'm going to go see somebody that's not biased, that's going to tell me what I want to hear and keep me stuck potentially, but somebody outside who is also a Christian that I can bounce the ideas in my head off of to get clear feedback that you still want to cipher through your own Holy Ghost, but it's still information. Just like you would go to a doctor and you would go in and they may say, oh, you have these lists of problems or these lists of issues. You still get to decide what is your treatment method. So same thing with therapy. You can go to a therapist, and I tell people, chew the meat, spit out the bones. Miranda doesn't have all the answers, but this is what research says. This is what science says. This is what the Bible says. You still have to be responsible for the choices that you make with the information that I provide to you from an unbiased place. That is really what seeking wise counsel is all about. And there is safety in that, because there's not always somebody telling you the thing that's from their perspective or the thing that makes that you want to hear. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. If I'm going too fast, please let me know, because sometimes I get super excited and then I start talking really fast and I don't even notice I'm talking really fast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking really fast. So just let me know. So I actually have two books. My first book, and I normally don't do this, but I was like, I probably should bring both my books. So my first book, I don't know if you'll be able to see it because I got the thing on. Okay, here it is. So this book is called My Ordered Steps. And it's a DBT wellness based planner. So DBT takes 4 main areas of life: how we think, how we interact with people, how we manage our emotions, and how we deal with stressful situations in a nutshell. So My Ordered Steps is a dialectical behavioral therapy wellness planner for Christians. So it talks about how to balance life socially, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it is a planner. It's a wellness planner. So I keep saying book, but it's actually a wellness planner. And you know what? I forget about sometimes this virtual thing is not always the best. So this might not work, but I was going to try and show you a little bit of the inside. So basically, at the beginning of the week, there's a chart for you to assess how well you're doing in these areas of life. And there's suggestions of things that you can do. There's also starting the week with a scripture, starting the week with the mantra, starting a week with a goal, but then also tracking your emotions during the week. And my favorite part of the wellness planner, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because this goes back to doing that inner work so that when and if you get into a relationship or even just a friendship, you are as healthy as you can be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially. Sometimes we're so socially immature and we're so spiritually immature, and then we're physically not taking care of ourselves and we're not mentally taking care of ourselves. All of those components of who we are impact one another. So if you're sick in any of those areas, it's going to directly impact another area. So that's why I'm bringing this up. But one of my favorite parts of the wellness planner is every day there's a journal page, and it talks about, I call it the pray, work, play, repair formula. Play, work, play, pray, because we want to start in the morning with prayer. Work, do what you got to do, whether it's taking care of kids or actually working a job. Play, do something to take care of yourself. Reward yourself for the good work that you've done. Acknowledge, hey, you know what? And give yourself praise or honor for something that you have done well. And then repair. The repair is repairing the relationships with people that you have stepped on their toe at some other point. And sometimes, I'm just going to say this because there's a lot of talk about forgiveness as something that's essential as it relates to moving forward. And I'm a firm believer in forgiveness. But this repair part, sometimes you have to be mindful that you're not putting yourself back in a negative situation, seeking approval of someone that's harmful for you, or that has been what we call gaslighting, making you believe that the things that you're concerned with are not really true, real, valid concerns. So be very careful with the repair part of it. But sometimes the other thing I want to say on the repair, you're not always able to speak directly with a person. So sometimes you may have to write a letter and throw it in the trash because you may not be able to ever speak with that person. There may be some other extenuating circumstances. But I really like that part because it brings our conscious part of our brain onto board every day to be intentional. And this is why we do what? Renew our mind every day. This is a part of how to do that. So then the other book is the Single and Faithfully Expecting book, Living Your Best Life. Oh, wait a minute, question, let me see. I treat myself to skincare, listen, yes, skincare products, Avon, Mary Kay, you name it, whatever works best for you. Absolutely, I love that. So the book, Single and Faithfully Expecting, Living Your Best Life as a Christian Single, actually became an Amazon #1 seller. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh, what? And then it made me recognize that there are so many Christian singles that are sitting on the pews in the church, feeling invalidated, feeling overlooked, feeling like they haven't fully reached their full potential because they're not married. And so I just, I started this as a 4-week program that I was going to do. And then I stopped and I said, I don't know. I got kind of overwhelmed. And I said, nobody's interested in learning about that. But in the end, I was pushed to share some of my stories. So I share a little bit of my story in the book. But one of the things that I find, and there is scripture throughout the book. So there's a little bit of therapeutic tools. There's a little bit of my story. And then also there's some areas for you, for food for thought, for you to reflect, to get you to the place where you're living in this season in the best way that God has for you. One of my favorite quotes. You will hear me say, you'll hear people in my singles groups say, you are more than your marital status. So you may have to get that on a sticky note. I am more than my marital status. You still have a ministry, you still have a purpose, you still have people you can reach, you still have people who love you, you still have purpose outside of marriage. Stop waiting until you get married to do things that are things you want to do. Stop waiting to do things that you know are your ministry to do, that you are purposed to do. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission to walk in the excellence that God has created you to be until you get married. Marriage is wonderful. It is created by God. Absolutely. I celebrate marriage. I'm not against marriage. I want people to want to be married, and I want you to do it loving who you are first, instead of feeling like once I'm married, then I've arrived. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. It's just another person and all their stuff if they haven't dealt with their stuff. This is why things like premarital counseling are so important. Real, true premarital counseling, not just like, oh, what are you guys going to do? No, get down to the nitty gritty things with somebody outside of just you and the person you're interested in or your parent. But get wise counsel all around, pastoral, but also premarital counseling. Is there another question? Oh, another comment. Okay. So, as it relates to being comfortable in the place that you currently are in, it literally comes down to a choice. It comes down to the words that you're speaking. If you are, and let me say this. First of all, let me back up. First of all, it's okay to admit that I'm lonely. I don't like being in this season, and I want my God-ordained spouse. That's okay to feel those things, and it's okay to speak those things over your life. And at the same time, you want to be very careful that you are not activating doubt. I'm never going to be married. This, I might as well give up. I might as well just date somebody, anybody. I'll just pick somebody, because you can do that for the sake of looking good, for the sake of, oh my gosh, you guys are cute together. Yeah, you can look really great together, but if there is verbal abuse, and verbal abuse can be anything. Oh, you're wearing that again? Wow. Okay. Well, I really like your hair this way. And I'm not saying it's not okay to make requests or to share what you like. I'm just saying to be aware of the things that people say to you in dating relationships. And I'm also being aware of how that impacts you. Does that make you go, like you sink a little bit and you feel it? Y'all know, you feel that sinking, or do you start people pleasing? Or do you switch to the extreme opposite of perfectionism? All of those things are setting the ground for an unhealthy relationship. Can be fixed, but you have to have self-awareness of the continued things that you do as a single person and as a dating person that keep you stuck in cycles you don't want to be in. Therapy can help you with that. A non-biased person can help you recognize those patterns, because sometimes we just think, oh, like, this is just normal. This is the way everyone does this. I didn't know people didn't do this or doesn't say this. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, I think we're doing good. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, this is a good question. So how to deal with things, basically when something's rubbing off from your family and you're seeing patterns in your parents' relationships or other family members' relationships, and you notice that you're starting to repeat those patterns. First of all, kudos to you for noticing. That's step number one, right? Just like AA or NA, Alcoholic Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, the first thing they tell people is you gotta admit, you gotta be aware, you have to know, right? That's why they, not that I agree with them saying, hi, I'm such and such, I'm an addict, because I think that solidifies it and we're supposed to speak things into existence and call them as they aren't. And so reaffirming that you're addict, that's another story. But I'm just saying, be careful of the words that you say. So noticing is actually really, really good. Then it goes back to what I just said. You have actually, now you're in the fork in the road and you have noticed that this is a pattern in my family. This is speech in my family. This is thoughts. This is the, this is an unhealthy way of behaving to get the things that I want, that I notice happening in my family. Seriously, kudos to you. That is the first step. Really, the only hard part is when your family notices you start behaving healthier and different, because then they're going to think, well, what's wrong with you? Well, why are you doing this? Are you saying that we're X, Y, and Z? And literally, it's okay to kind of pause. And this is the point also, it's super important, is to have good boundaries. Everybody that asks you a question, you do not have to answer. I always tell people, have some one-liners. You know what? I'm not able to do that today. If they are questioning why, okay, noticing sometimes my relationship with my parents can be toxic, and I thought I was seeing toxic relationships melt into, okay, but now they're starting to see the unhealthy traits. It's okay to say no, yes. No, my favorite thing, no is a complete sentence. That's one of my favorite sayings. No is a complete sentence. Often we feel, especially from families, the emotion of guilt will arise and we will feel like we have to share information or our rationale. And in reality, you don't. Mom, Dad, I love you. And that's not a question that I'm comfortable answering at this time. You don't have to be mean or you don't have to be rude. Also, depending on the relationship with your family and depending on your personality, I'm a pretty outspoken person. So sometimes I say stuff to my family and they're like, what's wrong with her? But I'll say, no, that's toxic and I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? Y'all crazy? Like, you guys are nuts. I will say things like that, but my family knows I'm just so outspoken. So they expect me to say something kooky at any point in time. But in all seriousness though, I do think at some point you want to say like, hey mom, hey dad, I love you all. And I have noticed X, Y, and Z, and that has impacted the way that I have relationships. That has impacted the way that I have thought about relationships. And again, this is stuff that can be explored in therapy, because at what I'm hearing is toxic connections, toxic relationships. So what I know is that down to the cellular, molecular levels, you have been experiencing trauma. And so you will react out of your trauma and you may not even recognize that that's what's happening. And so then you'll have to kind of go back and unlearn a lot of negative myths that you have believed about yourself because of what we term as an invalidating environment. So you can limit yourself if you can, and if you're comfortable, limit yourself with the amount of time that you spend with toxic people. That goes for friends, that goes for jobs, that goes for relationships. Yes. So, okay. So boundaries and being in the same household, that is so, so, so important. So I think this goes back to having some one-liners as well. And being able to separate, if you can't separate physically, then sometimes you have to detach a little bit mentally and emotionally to give yourself time and a space away and to reaffirm the things that you know are true. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes, like I said earlier, you have to have that real conversation. Mom, Dad, love you. I'm X amount of years old and me and Jesus need to go be alone and talk and work through this. And I need time to do that. Sometimes you have to be literally that honest, because if you don't, then you will operate out of shame and embarrassment and guilt. And then you will end up re-traumatizing yourself. And then you're questioning the decisions you make. You're looking for validation from other people. Then you will find relationships that follow the same patterns, because what it is it's familiar. So there's a part of our brain called the basal ganglia. That's where our memory is stored, and it's habitual. It's like, you know, where our habits are formed, they're stored in the basal ganglia. So what happens is your brain will start looking for the thing that is familiar, and then you will continue to carry out the same pattern. And you're like, why am I doing this again? This is why I'm gonna move on into the next point, is making sure that you are detoxing from relationships before you get into another relationship. You have to do that. You have to do that. You have to do that. Why do you think you need to why do we go on a fast? To cleanse, to reset, to reconnect. So why would it be any different from a relationship that ended? We need to reset, repause, reconnect, recenter yourself, get back connected to God, get back connected to your purpose. Is it gonna be easy? No, not at all. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Something being hard is not justification for not doing it. It was hard to learn to ride a bike. I still have scrapes to prove how hard it was to learn to ride a bike. But guess what? I can ride a bike now because I did it over and over and over, even though it was hard. Is breaking up with somebody that's not healthy for you hard? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is setting a limit or boundary or telling someone no, I'm not able to provide you what you're looking for, or I need privacy, or this isn't working? Is that hard? Yeah. Is the alternative also hard though? And how does that impact you in that moment, but also in the future? I think that's important to recognize. The worst thing, and also the easiest thing to do, is to just date somebody else to get over the last person that you dated. That's easy to do. Anybody can do that. That takes no effort at all. There's plenty of people that are available in this world that you could date. And you could just hop from relationship to relationship to the relationship. And you would still be broken. You would still find the same old patterns, the same old thinking. You would continue to re-traumatize yourself. You would be avoiding the real true issues. You would probably not be following the path that God has for you, and you would stay stuck. So really, what's the better thing to do? The hard thing, do the work, set your limit, or continue the same pattern and jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to avoid pain. That's really all it is. It's an avoidant technique to avoid the pain. The problem with that is we need pain. How do you know you have an infection in your tooth? Because it hurts. So you do what? You go to the dentist and get it taken care of. Same thing mentally, same thing emotionally, same thing spiritually. If you're hurting emotionally because of a heartbreak, go to the mender of the heart. Go to a professional that can help you break down some of those myths and illogical beliefs that you have about yourself. You know, one of the things that I used to speak about pretty heavily is, and you'll hear people say this for grieving people, for relationships, give it time. Time heals. No, it don't. It just goes on. Time does not heal. You doing the work is what heals. You praying is what heals. You asking the questions, you doing the work, you working through the process, making choices, changing, that is what does the healing. You giving it to God, that is what gives, that's the healing process, not time. Oh, just give it time, you'll feel better. So I'm supposed to still be sad that I'm by myself and what I thought was going to be my wife or my husband for the rest of my life is no longer that. And I'm just going to let time pass and then I'm going to feel better. Sounds nice. Not a reality. Not a reality. If you keep avoiding the issues, the thoughts, the patterns of behaviors, the myths you believe about yourself, then it may seem like time has healed, but all it has done is delayed your healing process. Still got to do the work. So what will happen is, if you don't do the work while you're single, you'll get married and you'll have children, and you will notice that you are repeating the same patterns that you experience. So now you know what we call that? Generational curses, because you didn't take time to break them. Something to think about, guys. Like, this isn't just, you know, hey, I'm lonely and I want to date something. This is serious. This is serious. The choices that we make now during this time impacts to the third and fourth generation. That is what the Bible says. You think it doesn't matter. You think, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm just living my best life and just having fun and all this. That's your choice. That is easier than doing the work, but it's so much beautiful on the other side. It's like a light bulb. When you get that outside perspective, it's just like when you go to the altar and, you know, you feel freedom or deliverance or a burden lifted. And it's like, oh, I can think clearer. I can see better. I never thought about this. That's so much better. And then you set yourself up for success. And then you set your marriage up for success. And then you set your parenting style up for success. The other thing is you got to have a lot of grace and flexibility with yourself and with other people. And what I have noticed over the last maybe like 6 years, I've noticed in dating in the church, has really maybe become disheartening. A lot of people, and I've had experienced this, where my brother in Christ treats me worse than my coworker. I mean, I've walked into a church building and there's gentlemen in front of me and they've let the door slam in front of my face. And I have a coworker that would never have allowed that to happen. So I've noticed this disconnect between treating one another as the bride of Christ. In the end, that is your brother in Christ. That is your sister in Christ. We have to treat one another accordingly. We have to. We have to. Because if that isn't your husband, if that isn't your wife, they are still a child of the King. They still need salvation. They still need prayer. They still need forgiveness. That don't mean you keep putting yourself in their way if they've treated you wrong. You can pray for them from a distance, okay? Don't keep yourself in unhealthy situations, because that's my brother in Christ and I love him. Love him from a distance and get yourself out of there and be safe. I think that's all. Oh, what did I wanted to, there was something else I wanted to say about relationship detox. Well, dating strategy, relationship detox, all along the same. One of the things that, and this goes back to not jumping into relationship after relationship after relationship, is make sure you allow time to get to know one another. Ask questions. Don't place yourself in sticky situations. We hear that sounds good. And everybody on here is an adult. And so sometimes it's hard. I'm like, I'm an adult. Yeah. Okay. And you still have hormones. You still have hormones. So just be aware and conscious of that and make sure to pace yourself. While it's fun and exciting to learn about somebody new and to date, all it is pheromones and serotonin and oxytocin. That's just hormones, guys. It's not real love yet. It literally is just hormones. And I've had to remind myself sometimes, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really great. This is great guy. I'm like, hey, just hormones, girl, calm down. It's just hormones. Rein it back in. Very easy to get off track because you see a beautiful woman or a beautiful man, and it's like, oh my gosh, this could be the one. And you're talking, and they're interested in you, and they're making you feel all the things that you haven't given yourself because you haven't validated yourself. So now they are feeding you the things that we should be getting fed from God, and you should be affirming it as your second witness. Now they are affirming these things. So what you in essence tell yourself is, what God said isn't true. And I don't believe my own self, but I'm going to believe this person. And so then you make yourself become reliant on an outside man, woman in a relationship to give you the thing that only God himself really should be giving you. So just be aware of that. Hormones be lying. They lie all the time. Let's see, how are we doing? Do we have any questions? Are there any things that you all want to know about that I have not touched on? Try to touch on a couple different things.
You guys feel free to raise your hand or just holler a question out, or if you want to chat or send a message privately, I can ask for you.
I'm not sure of the age range of the safe zone, and if people have been married before or not married before, but sometimes that comes up as well, and people want to know about that. And unfortunately, I honestly don't feel the church has done a really good job of addressing the older single who has either been married before or who currently has children. I don't know if there's enough support surrounding that. So definitely, I encourage you to have a Christian-based counselor to discuss the ins and out of that and allow yourself to truly express the real raw emotions in a safe place without feeling like you have to filter what you're saying in order to get approval. So that's what I would say about that, because I get a lot of questions about that often as well. And again, I'm not a divorce expert, and and I've had conversations with people that want to know about divorce and am I able to get married again and all that. I'm not here to tell you that you can or you can't. I think you should talk to the Lord and your pastor about that. But what I do know is the Lord has reserved one day for judgment. So if you have made a mistake or what have you, there is still time and space for repentance and to turn things around. And, you know, God's still handing out forgiveness.
If somebody were to want to seek counseling, how would they go about?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can find a Christian counselor. I am a part of the Center for Apostolic Counseling, or CAC, we call it, CAC. So you can look on that website, but there's not a lot of people on that website that are specific. So, well, let me say this. It's going to be super, 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 super duper hard to find a specific, if you're looking for an apostolic counselor. I'm just going to tell you that now. There's not that many of us. You can find Christian therapists all over the place. Psychology Today, Open Path Collective, ChristianTherapist.com, I think it is. And so you can even do a Google search. That's how a lot of people find my services, because we list it as a Christian counseling center. So you can literally go to Google and type in Christian therapist near me. So that's a good way to start to look for someone. You always, like I talked about before, you do want to have a phone consultation to like interview the therapist. I always offer that. I offer a free 10-minute consultation because I may not be a good fit for what you're looking for. So it would make no sense for me to have you start seeing me as a therapist. Or somebody may say, I don't know, I don't like Miranda's philosophy, and they don't want to see me. That's okay. Here are some other places you can look for a potential therapist. So I always try to also offer help in that way. The thing that you should know, and this is the part that I think most people don't know, when you are looking for a Christian counselor, therapists are only able to practice therapy in the state that they are licensed in. So I've had people referred to me from the Center for Apostolic Counseling because they're like, I want an apostolic counselor. And they're like, oh my gosh, her profile speaks to me, and they reach out to me, but they live in Washington. I'm not licensed in Washington. So and this is the part of why you want to seek a licensed counselor. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. There are licensed professional counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists, licensed, all kind of license for therapists. Because we are held accountable to a board that we have to say, we agree to these set of practices. We are going to practice ethically. We are trained. We are being truthful. We are being honest. And if you have a session with me and I don't do those things, you can go to the board and report me. And then I would get in a lot of big trouble if I'm practicing unethically. So it's very much similar to a doctor. They have an ethical board and they can only practice in the state that they're licensed. There are lots of other ways to connect with people. I personally and my employee, because what we're noticing is that there's a lot of people that need individual therapy, but there's also some people that need general life skills. Mm-hmm. So we're offering more workshops. So in September, we're doing she's doing it, I'm supervising, a 4-week, this second go around of a 4-week workshop on boundary setting. So how to say no, how to say yes, what gets in the way, how to have boundaries at home, work, with your family, and with others in relationships. All of that's going to be covered, because what we're noticing is it's not always that people need trauma therapy or mental health, or they have a mental illness, but they're having a difficulty in an area of their life that they can utilize extra support in. And so that can be, you can have that, it's a workshop. So you can go on Eventbrite and type in, I think it's called #boundaries. And you can see tons of workshops related to wellness on places like Eventbrite, even on Facebook Marketplace, not Marketplace, but if you type in Facebook, a lot of times people's events, like this was listed as an event. So sometimes those events will pop up as well. Pricey. So it depends. It depends on the state. It depends on the specialties of the person. So I'm specialized as a neuroscience coach and leader on neurospirituality, neural relationships. I'm a certified dialectical behavioral therapist counselor. I'm a certified mental health first aid responder. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. I think those are all my certifications. So that all costs a lot. So I don't see people for $30. You know, like sometimes you can't put a price on your mental wellness. But this is also another reason why my company is moving more towards doing group sessions instead of just individual, because we can offer that at a lower rate than an individual session. I will say, excuse me, I mentioned earlier, Open Path Collective. Open Path Collective. They are cash-based. It's a program that allows you to search therapists in your area, and they all agree, my company is on there as well. We agree not to charge anyone above, I think it's $60. So some sessions are as low as 25 or 30. Some sessions are more than that. And then it is a membership, like a one-time membership, and I can't remember how much that one-time membership cost. But then they provide you ongoing resources as well as it relates to mental health. So that might be a really good option for somebody that's on a tight budget to look at Open Path Collective. And so if talking with a counselor, wanting to know their views. Okay, so I will say this as far as like holiness or being conservative. So I will say this, not all people that call themselves Christian therapists practice Christianity. I have noticed that, so I'm not gonna lie to you on that part. I have noticed that. So you wanna be specific. Now, first of all, it's not gonna be, you're most likely are not gonna find a therapist that if you call them up and you say, do you believe in Acts 2:38? How does your church baptize? They're not gonna work with you. They're not. Because for our religious beliefs, as a therapist, I'm just talking as a therapist, we don't have to divulge that to you all. We don't. Like, that is something that is extra. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's the way I want to relay it to you. That's just like you calling up and saying, so do you have any children? Well, how many children do you have? As if those are the things that I need to have in order to help you. Many people identify themselves as a Christian counselor, meaning that they will support your Christian beliefs as you believe. So it's not my job as a therapist to tell somebody that they are wrong in the way that they live their life at all. I would be operating outside of my ethical practices. My job is to walk alongside you in this journey called life and partner with you and provide you some skills and potential direction. But my personal beliefs on certain things do not impact wholeheartedly. They don't impact the information I relay. So just be careful about that part, unless you live in a state that has a CAC counselor, then you're probably gonna run into that. Me, that's no problem. I mean, if I know people calling me from CAC, I already know they're apostolic and they want an apostolic counselor. And so that's a no-brainer. But if you find a Christian therapist outside of that, then you may get some pushback and they may not work with you. Not saying don't ask the questions, you have the right to ask those questions. As far as my experience, adults with autism, no, do not have any experience with adults with autism. My employee does. She has experience with adults and children. Okay, did I miss any questions? Just in response to giving in and just to make people happy. That is the easy thing to do, but it's also the most damaging. So I would say, if you can, find a way to communicate your needs. It would be helpful if mom and dad, can you support me in mom and dad? Can you refrain from? Sometimes we have to phrase our desire in a question, and now they can say no. They can say no. But generally, if you're asking, like, can you refrain from calling me a name because it hurts my feelings? I mean, if somebody's saying no to that, I would be moving out. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to find a roommate on Craigslist. No, I'm not recommending you do that, but you have to do what you have to do to be well. Healing can start anywhere, but if you remain in a toxic place, then that is all you know. So your brain will be hardwired to that toxic behavior, to those words, to those interactions, and then you will treat other people poorly. You'll treat yourself poorly. And then if you eventually get married and have children, that will become a generational curse unless you decide, enough, this ends with me, and this is how I'm going to do it. And sometimes you need to partner with people that you trust in your church to help you through that process as well. Any other questions? I don't know, hopefully this is helpful for you all.
It's been great. Thank you very much. Can you send me maybe a link to that workshop that you were discussing, and I can post it?
Yeah. I can grab that. Send it over to you.
It looks like Lynn has a question.
There's another question.
Hello.
Lynn?
Hi. Yeah, your talk was very good. I dealt with divorce this year all at one time with like several deaths. Like I have not found a good, support group for grief. In the Christian world, it's been very difficult. Just trying to get information on that.
Yes, you are 100% correct on that. That's going to be one of our next groups, just specifically because we have also noticed that, especially just even in COVID, there's been so many deaths and people don't know how to grieve. And some people maybe they forget or not know, the grief process is a process. And it's not like, oh, that was a year ago, or, oh, that was 5 months ago. And you should be able to manage X, Y, and Z now, or you should be able to handle, and it doesn't work that way. So start, and hopefully you're giving yourself permission to be sad, be angry, cry when you need to, because if you don't, then what will happen is you will invalidate how you feel about deaths and divorce, because they're all loss. It's grief and loss. And so that will kind of come in as a wave. So making sure that you're having a non-judgmental stance towards yourself and how you are experiencing it. And then also this could be a boundary point as well. If there's something you're not comfortable discussing, or people are saying things, it's going to get better with time, you know, saying things that they're trying to be helpful. And if it's not helpful for you, you can say, you know what, I know you're trying to be helpful. Saying this does not help me. It hurts me. And you can walk away and give yourself permission to walk away. But I do understand, I do hear you. I have looked for grief counseling groups specifically for Christians, because I had a couple people we were going to refer to and we could not find one. So we're going to create it. And that's what we're going to have to start doing, is creating the things that the church needs.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a question. How can you talk to someone if you have trust issues, but really need to talk to get through past things?
Talk to someone as in dating, or talk to a therapist?
I believe talk to a therapist.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So again, a lot of this is giving yourself permission. Sometimes especially if you know that it's a need that you have, sometimes we have to do things afraid. Just like I talked about before with learning to ride a bike, learning to do something new is scary. Absolutely. It's unfamiliar, so that makes sense. So our brain naturally wants to go into preservation. And so that means, sometimes that means avoidance, because we're like, no, that's going to be painful. Remember we talked about earlier, pain. So our brain and body literally want to avoid pain. And so we have to get to a place where we say, the water is already hot. The water that I'm in, the space that I'm in, it is already hot. So I can get myself out of this and try something new, or I can continue to stay in this place that I know is not good for me and let that continue. And then what's the end result? You're still not where you want to be. But again, like I said before, try it. Do your research, look at their website, call them, listen to their voice, tell them, let them know, this is my first time looking for a therapist. I really want a Christian therapist. I am really nervous about this. Be open and be honest, and listen to how they respond. If they respond favorably, then you may say, okay, you know what? I'm going to try this out. And every first appointment is what we would call an assessment or an intake, just like when you go for your annual physical. So we ask a bunch of questions, we get to know you. If you don't like that process, you don't have to go back. You don't have to go back to that person. Or you can leave early too. You know, you don't. I'm a firm believer of get out if it's uncomfortable and you don't like it. You have to remember, you are hiring the therapist to do a job. So you are actually the employer.
No, so far, no other questions.
Okay.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I have really enjoyed it. Again, hopefully I didn't talk too fast for you all.
No, it was great. And I've posted on the group page and in the chats, I've posted your books.
Okay.
And when you send me that link, I'll post that as well, so everybody has those resources.
Excellent. I sure will. I'll get that right over to you as soon as we're done here. It has been a pleasure. I hope, like I said, I didn't talk too fast and make you more confused than where you were before. But I will leave you with these thoughts. You are more than your marital status. You still have an amazing life that God created you for. You have purpose, you have abilities, and you can activate them now. and it's okay to seek wise counsel. A multitude, there is safety in wise counsel, and that can be with your pastor and your best friend and a therapist. So thank you all for having me, and I'll see you in the safe zone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
That was awesome. Thank you.
You're very